Now let's study the supply side. To study the supply side, we're going to define the term leisure. So leisure refers to any activity besides paid work in the labor market. So playing, sleeping, eating, any other thing that you could be spending your time on apart from working, that's considered to be leisure. Individuals face a trade-off between income and leisure. They need income, so they want to work a given number of hours, but they also want time off to do other things in life. So the question that we're going to ask in this section is, how will the individual decide on the optimal level of leisure and income? More specifically, how many hours of work will the individual decide to supply each day? To answer this question, we're going to go back to what is a simple consumer choice problem. This time we're looking at the trade-off between leisure and income, and we're going to try to figure out what is the optimal level of both of these goods that the individual is willing to consume. So we're back to chapter 4 and the consumer's optimal choice. Here you have graphed several indifference curves that correspond to different levels of utility for the individual. And you see a budget constraint. The budget constraint is this blue line B that connects the amount of time that is spent by the individual working for a wage. So here we're assuming that the wage is 10 euros per hour. So at maximum of 24 hours a day, the maximum amount of money that this individual can earn is 240 euros. And on the x-axis here, you find that if the individual spends 24 hours on leisure, well, that individual is earning 0 euros in income. So the budget constraint connects these two intersections with the x-axis and with the y-axis. The slope of the budget constraint is equal to minus W0, which is the wage rate. The optimal consumption point of leisure and income will therefore be the tangency point between the highest indifference curve that the individual can be situated on and the budget constraint. This is point A. At point A, you find that the marginal rate of substitution between leisure and income is equal to the wage. What happens if there's a wage increase? And the reason why we're going to study this question is that we want to build the individual's supply curve of labor. So we're going to relate quantity of labor supplied with wage. So let's say that at this first blue line here, we have a wage which is equal to 4 euros. So here we see that the maximum amount that can be earned by the individual is 96 euros. If the individual now works for a wage of 10 euros per hour, the maximum amount that the individual can earn is 240 euros. So here we're on an indifference curve I2. See that on the original indifference curve I1, the optimal hours spent working was equal to 6 hours and 18 hours of leisure. When the wage is equal to 10 euros, here now we're on the indifference curve I2, and you see that at I2, the optimal number of hours spent on leisure is equal to 15 hours, and the optimal number of hours spent on working is equal to 9 hours. And if the wage increases even more to 14 euros per hour, well, this time the optimal number of hours spent on leisure is equal to 17 hours, and the optimal number of hours spent on work is equal to 7 hours. Why is that so? You could think that actually the more the higher the hourly wage, the more the individual will want to work. This is true to some extent, and we can see it here on the labor supply curve. This is true that when the labor supply goes from 6 hours to 9 hours, which corresponds to a wage that goes up to 10 euros per hour, for those for a wage that is equal to 10 euros per hour or less, it does make sense for the individual to continue to increase the amount of labor supplied. However, past this wage of 10 euros, you see that the supply curve of the worker is backward bending, which means that higher wages lead to fewer hours worked. This actually makes sense because as the individual has already earned a relatively high income for the day, the individual actually wants to spend more time on leisure. So it actually can make sense that once a certain amount of income has been earned, the rest of the time may be chosen by the individual to be spent on leisure.